If you remember the previous section, you'll hear me say that by far and away the most important grip for tomoe-nage is collar and sleeve, like so. Okay, and this is where most of your success with tomoe-nage is going to come. Now, if that's the best grip for tomoe-nage all round, you might say, is there a second best? And in my opinion, the one we're about to look at now probably is the second best. We're going to come to the camera here so you can see what it is. We're going to start off right versus right situation. My opponent comes out and makes a grip, and I can either work from here at the elbow if he maintains the grip, or I can take his sleeve off and we can work like so. Okay. Now, whenever someone goes into classic sleeve lapel grips, he takes the grip like so. This is kind of like Jiu-Jitsu 101. You see people grip like this all the time. This is going to give us a great opportunity to take a very special grip, which can be very useful for many forms of throw, including Yoko tomoe-nage. I'm going to take my hand off my training partner's lapel, and I'm going to put my hand over their bicep towards the tricep. So he grips me above the elbow, classic sleeve lapel situation, right versus right. I'm going to go over the top, and I'm going to grip all the way in here, and I'm going to take the seam that runs down the back of every sleeve and control my opponent like so. This gives me tremendous control of my training partner's shoulder. This grip here gives me control of my training partner's head. This one gives me control of the shoulder. Okay? And when you control the shoulder, you control the movements of the head by default. Just got to pull your arm away from me. Feels like your entire shoulder is controlled from the back. Okay? When I go to make a strong body, look how when I move across my opponent's body, I can pull his shoulders out of alignment very easily using this grip. Okay? If you face the camera in the back, watch my training partner's gi. You will see a line of tension between my two hands. Strong body. So that when I control my opponent, keep upright, we control through that line of tension. And the shoulders are controlled between my two hands. With his two shoulders between my hands, I have maximum control of those shoulders, and I can rotate them, move in this direction here. Now, watch what happens when I commit to the ground. When I take that falling step, strong body, Giancarlo, I bring his shoulder across in a way which is incredibly hard for my opponent to stop. This is an incredibly effective way to ensure that Giancarlo's head is taken over my head. And as we saw earlier, that's the key to any Yoko tomoe-nage. So once again, we'll take the position in front of the camera. Watch the gripping. We start Jiu-Jitsu 101, right versus right. I take my hand off the lapel and I bring my hand over his arm and I fix up the grip right there at the upper tricep. So that now you will see I control his two shoulders between my hands. You will see a line of tension between my two hands, strong body, Giancarlo, so that when I sit down to the floor, we get tremendous control over our opponent's shoulder girdle. Okay? This is one of my absolute favorite Yoko tomoe-nage grips. I put this one right behind the old sleeve lapel. That's my go-to, but this one, damn close, almost as good. Okay, and we're going to see soon it gives you an extra option that sleeve lapel doesn't give you. So, right versus right situation. I get my first grip on, strong body. Now he puts his hands on. I go over the top and lock up, strong body. I start to draw my training partner around the corner. We go into our full length step, and now we're in the perfect position to throw the man through. Now you might be saying, okay, well, you just told us that sleeve lapel was the ultimate grip. Why would you use this one? I like this grip when I have opponents who are pulling away from me. They know that I like tomoe-nage, and they're doing this to me. Sleeve lapel. They sink their weight back on their heels, and when I try tomoe-nage, I can't bring the head over my head, and I fail. Okay? Whenever you have people like this, the extra shoulder control makes it very hard for them to prevent you pulling the head over the head. The main disadvantage of this move is that it's kind of predictable what you're going to do after this. There's not that many throws that come off this move. Off this grip. So there is one disadvantage. Okay. So he comes out and grips. We're right versus right. I take my hand over the top. I fix up my second grip, strong body, Giancarlo, and I start the action of squaring him up. Now, Giancarlo puts all of his weight against me and really resists the throw. But when I sit into that falling step, it's so easy to pull his head over my head, and we get a beautiful throw as a result. Now, I'm going to sound like a used car salesman at this point. Wait, there's more. There's another great benefit to this grip. For the first time, you're going to be able to throw in multiple directions. Have you noticed that every tomoe I've shown you so far all involve the same throwing leg? I'm standing right-handed and I'm throwing with my left foot. So everything I've shown you so far has involved standing right and left foot as the throwing leg. Okay? A natural question for you guys to be asking is, can you throw standing right with the other leg? And the answer is, absolutely, you can. And there's a lot of benefits to doing that. The only problem, let's come this way, the only problem with throwing with the opposite leg is that Giancarlo can put this hand on the floor. Watch what happens if I try to throw with sleeve lapel and I fall the opposite way. Strong stance. From here, if I fall the opposite way, he can put his hand on the mat. And now when I try to bring him up, he can cartwheel. And you end up with no throw. Okay? Remember guys, if he can put his hand on the mat, an athletic world champion like Giancarlo can just handspring or cartwheel out of the tomoe. Okay? So that's the downside of throwing to the opposite side. But there's a solution. The grip we just showed you prevents him from doing that. Right versus right situation. Here, Giancarlo can handstand over this arm. But what if I take Giancarlo's arm and I take the tricep grip that we've talked about, and now we start to move around. When I step to my training partner, I'm going to step in a way where it looks like I'm going to throw as we have been so far, but instead I fall the opposite way. When he goes to base out, I'm controlling my training partner's sleeve with that tricep grip, and he can't base out, can't cartwheel. And you have a beautiful misdirectional tomoe. Now you're going to get tricky on your opponents. Now they don't know which way you're throwing. Are you throwing left or are you throwing right? They don't know until you commit to the ground. Let's look at this again. We start right versus right. Jiu-Jitsu 101 grips. I transfer over the top and take the tricep. Now I control him between my sleeves. I can throw in front of me. This is the front direction here. Okay? So I can throw in front. But I can also reverse the direction because my opponent can't cartwheel. Now I step across and I throw in the opposite direction. Okay, now things get really interesting because your poor training partner doesn't know which direction you're going to throw in. One grip, two completely different directions, two completely different throwing legs. In one case, you throw with the left leg, the other throw with the right leg. He doesn't know which way it's coming. And it all comes off one grip. So this is one of the reasons why I favor this grip so much, why it's such a great throwing grip. So he comes out, takes a grip. I get my first grip on. I take my hand to the lapel, I go over the top and lock up. Now I control his shoulders. He goes to yank away from me and you can see the tension running between my his shoulder blades. Now I step across, he thinks I'm going to throw forwards. Then I just completely change direction and we end up with a beautiful throw on top. Okay? Can you see what's happening here, guys? Conventionally, when I throw tomoe, I throw my head falling this way. So I'm across the body in this direction. Now I'm throwing the opposite way, falling in this direction. In one, I throw with the right foot. In the other, I throw with the left foot. And in both cases, the grip is the same. So from his perspective, there's no telling which way I go. So we come out, right versus right. Now, who knows which way we're going to go? I could come out in this direction. I could come out in this direction. Only you know. And as a result, you're going to throw a lot of people. This kind of misdirection is what makes it work against someone who knows you like tomoe-nage. As you throw a couple of times in left, he expects that. Suddenly you're throwing right. He's like, what the fuck is happening? Okay? Doesn't know which way you're going to come in, which way you're going to finish. This is one of my absolute favorite grips for Yoko tomoe-nage. I'm sure that after a little bit of experimentation, it'll become one of your favorites too. Now, we're looking at alternative grips to make you guys effective with tomoe-nage in a fairly short period of time. Here's a grip and a piece of advice. If you sidestep in Yoko tomoe-nage, you're going to be a lot more successful than if you just fall right in front of people. Okay? What does this mean? Okay, I'm going to stand with my back to the camera, so we're right in front of each other. Just stand sweet, buddy. From here, if I just stand right in front of my opponent and I try to put a foot on board, it's really hard for me to throw him. He just bows out and you're like, ugh. It's really hard, okay? In fact, you might even find it difficult if you're less flexible and perhaps a little older. You might even find it difficult to get your foot to his hip, okay? You might find something like this. You're here in front and there's no room to get your foot on board, okay? Regardless of which foot I use, because you're right in front of the guy. But what if I stood here, off center, either on this side or here? Now, it would be a lot easier for me to get a foot on board. And when I throw, I'm kind of out of the way of my opponent. So falling down and putting him into the space is a lot easier now, okay, than if I'm directly in front of him. Let's combine this insight of sidestepping first to make it easier for you to get your foot in place, combined with the same grip we looked at earlier. Now guys, do you remember when we started right versus right, Jiu-Jitsu 101, sleeve lapel, and we went over the top, okay? That I said was one of my all-time favorite grips for tomoe-nage, okay? Another grip which I strongly favor is when I don't have hands on my opponent and he grabs my tricep, like so, okay? Now from here, I take a reverse power hand on this side. So I grip up with my left hand on my training partner's lapel, and my second hand goes over the top. Now he's probably going to grab your sleeve, and you end up with a weird and funky looking grip where you seem to be standing right, but gripping left. Kind of weird, okay? Now, when we use this grip, my opponent can't base out on his left-hand side, but he can base out on his right-hand side. So what we're going to do is we're going to step out to the side, like so, and get that side step on. Then from here, we're just going to go into our crouch, and we're going to put our foot on our training partner's hip and throw in what appears to be the wrong way. As we go down to the floor, to get our foot in place, and find ourselves with the perfect throw. The combination of side step and covering our training partner's arm with that overwrap grip means he can't base out in the direction of the throw. And because you have a power hand on your opponent's lapel, you can really pull his head in and operate from point blank range to throw a lot of people with a lot of power. This is often a very good throw for the less flexible people out there. You still want to have an effective tomoe-nage, but perhaps they're a little slower, perhaps a little older, and perhaps a little less flexible. So, from a situation we start off in front of our training partner, I put a hand on. I come over the top, and I get the overwrap grip. The overwrap, he gets my tricep, very common grip in the standing position, and I overwrap to take his tricep. Now, even if he wanted to base out, I control the arm. He couldn't do it. I have complete control of his shoulder. Pull your shoulder back away from me. I have complete control of his shoulder, and I can draw him in towards me. My second hand comes on as a power hand, so I can push and pull. Okay? He takes his legs back and away from me. This is the perfect time to hit it. Now, I just step out to the side. So he thinks, what's going on here? It's a weird throw. He's standing right-handed, but he's gripping left-handed. Where the hell is this going? And then all we do is take the man over, okay? Because you're so well positioned at the start of the throw, it's really easy to get your foot in a good throwing position. And because you have that strong grip on the lapel, it's really easy to bring his head over your head. And people who are perhaps a little less flexible, perhaps a little less dexterous in the standing position, usually find they can throw with this quite readily. So once again, we'll start off in front of the camera. Okay, first, I just put a hand on my opponent. He goes in and gets a grip, and I go over the top and I overwrap his arm. So I have good control of his shoulder. He goes to pull away from me. We've got excellent control of the shoulder. Now I put my hand on, and we've got control of his head. Okay, I generate movement. I get him somewhat bent over, and then from this position, I step out to the side. Let's move away from the I step out to the side. So we're sidestepping. He can't base out on this side because I control the arm and I push it across. Strong body. Now, as I go to sit, we end up with a beautiful misdirectional throw. Because you're standing right-handed, but gripping left-handed, it's very discombobulating for your opponent. He doesn't know what's going on. This guy's gripping the wrong way. What the hell's going on here? You have total control of his shoulder through the overwrap grip. He can't base out and cartwheel and defend himself. And you have total control of the head through the reverse power hand. And because you start with a side step, you have your back to the camera, Giancarlo. Because you start with a side step, you're in a position where it's really easy for you to get your foot to the hip. All I have to do is sit down to the floor, and we get a nice throw down to the mat. This might be a great way for those of you who are perhaps a little older or a little less flexible to start hitting tomonages in competition and in sparring early on in your development. Now, guys, my goal in this video is not to have you have a decent tomonagi. My goal is to have you have a damn good tomonagi so that you can start throwing people regardless of how they stand, regardless of how you stand, and regardless of what grip you have. I did say that 90% of your success with tomonagi is probably going to come with sleeve lapel grips. Okay, I still believe that. Nonetheless, a good mark of mastery of a throw to distinguish someone who's good at a throw versus someone who's great at a throw is that people who are great at a given throw can do it from almost any grip. If they can put their hands on their opponent's jacket, they can throw them with that throw. Okay, when you can do that, it's a good sign that you're not just someone who has a passing acquaintance with a throw, but someone who knows that throw inside out. And that's what I want you guys to be able to do. Now, one of my personal favorite throws for tomonagi, and I'll explain why shortly, is double triceps. When you have double triceps, it gives you an unusual control of your opponent's shoulder girdle. You have less control of the head, but you have more direct control of the shoulders. And that can be a very valuable thing in tomonagi. Because you're gripping both of your training partner's triceps, you can throw in both directions. You can turn your opponent's shoulders like a wheel, left and right. And as a result, you can throw with both of your legs. And that becomes very difficult for your opponent to stop. When you go sleeve lapel, you can only throw in one direction. It's a good direction, but it's only one. You go double triceps, no one knows which direction you're going to go. And your opponent can't put a hand on the floor and cartwheel in any given direction because both arms are controlled. Okay? I'm going to demonstrate it first when someone is standing as though we were in a ground situation. Okay, if you stand over me, buddy, just bend over. Double triceps involves me, just face this way, come around this way. Double triceps involves me getting a hold of the two triceps like so. Go to stand up and away from me, buddy. It puts such pulling pressure on my training partner that I can connect my forehead to Giancarlo's collarbone. When he goes to yank me up off the floor, it just pulls my weight underneath him. Okay, so he goes to yank me off the mat, it just pulls my body weight underneath him. And now we have situations where you're like a ball underneath your opponent. As you take him up into the air, you just close his two elbows together. And he can't base out with his hands. And as a result, you get an amazing throwing ability. From a more realistic standing situation, just have your back to the camera, Giancarlo. When he gets grips on me, I just go in, I get triceps on one side, okay? He gets my sleeve, I go underneath, and I get triceps on the other side. Look at the control I have of his shoulders between my hands. Do you see a line of tension running through his jacket? And his jacket goes tight over his shoulder blades. Now I put my head here in his collarbones. When he goes to yank away from me, I'm connected to him. Okay, you have tremendous connection. And now all I do is the full-length step across in front of my training partner, and you get beautiful throws. Not only do you get beautiful throws, you get beautiful throws in two directions. Let's have a look at this. So from here, he comes out and gets his grip. I get high tricep. Now from here, I put my head in close, I put my second hand on, he gets a grip on me, and I come in and I get my second tricep grip, like so. With that good connection, I can fall in this direction or I can fall in this direction. Your choice. So I might, for example, fall across in front of my training partner, throw in this direction. I can throw with my right foot as I just did, or I can throw with my left foot. Either way, you're going to get a beautiful throw. This grip puts so much direct control over your opponent's shoulder girdle that you can throw in both directions. He has a very hard time basing out, and you get tremendous throwing power as a result. So let's have a look at it in a more realistic setting. We have an opponent who comes out and makes grips. I go in, I get my first grip. From this position, he puts his second hand on, and now we've got that dual control of our training partner's shoulders. As we go around our training partner, we now get an amazing ability to throw this man in any given direction. This grip is very easy to get, and it gives tremendous control of the shoulders, great rotation of your opponent's upper body, and lets you throw with either foot in either direction. It's an absolutely superb throwing grip that's very easy to get. It doesn't require you to fight for inside position. Think grip. It doesn't require inside position. I just grip on the outside. He gets a grip, I'm on the outside. So I don't have to fight, make your elbow strong. I don't have to fight for inside position. I just let him take whatever grips he wants, and I just take the grips on the outside. Okay? Now, as he goes to move around with me, you have total control of your opponent's shoulders. If he goes to throw me with a right-handed throw, my head is right in his shoulder. Go to throw. He can't move against my head. And now, wherever my head goes, he's connected. And he finds it very hard to stop that rotation of the body. This is my favorite close-range throw. It's especially valuable in static situations where you have a hard time moving people. Sleeve lapel tomonaji tends to work best when there's dynamic movement. But when we're static, in close, head position, in close like so, this is the best time for these double tricep grips. With the head in close to the collarbone. When you feel there's less movement and the range has been diminished between you and your opponent, try double tricep. Get your head in your opponent's collarbones, shut down his ability to throw you, and then suddenly you'll find you can throw him. Now, my goal in this video is to get you throwing people regardless of grip situation, regardless of whether he's right-handed, regardless of whether he's left-handed, regardless of what his posture is. Anytime, any place, any body, okay? A big part of that means you got to be able to throw left-handed people. If he comes out left-handed and you're right, you got to be able to throw him. Now, one problem is that many of your opponents make it very difficult to get to your lapel. So if we're left versus right, many of your opponents, even if I get a lapel, will take their own grip and then strip the lapel, and you can't keep a hold of the lapel. Okay? When I try to come back, they use the elbow to block me, can't get it. When I go over the top, they use their other hand to block me, and I can't get to the lapel. Okay? So if you go against a skilled grip fighter, it can be very difficult to maintain a grip. He can break it, and he can block you when you try to come back. So let's have a look at this at close range in color. So even if I successfully get a grip, he can come through and snap my grip off. Then when I try to come under, he blocks with the elbow. Then when I try to come over, he blocks with the hand, and the whole time he gets a hold of my sleeve. Now he can take me out of balance, bring my head out of position, and he can throw me. Okay, so that's obviously a good thing for him and a very bad thing for you. There's one grip from Kenkyotsu your opponent can never block. One grip. Let's go this side. If he gets my lapel, he can use his elbow to stop me getting under, and he can use his hand to stop me going over. But one grip he can never stop me getting is that one, because it's outside the body. If he tries to block with the elbow, there's no effect. If he tries to stop with the second hand, there's no effect. So one grip I can always get is this high tricep grip. When I grip it, I grip for the seam that runs down the back of every sleeve. Don't be foolish and just grab anywhere around you. This is a feeble grip, okay? There's a seam that runs down the back of every sleeve that feels like a rope. I take my hand and I lock it in and I find the rope. So when Giancarlo goes to pull his arm away from me, it's like you have a rope around his shoulder. And it offers tremendous grip control for pulling, okay? True, it doesn't control the head, but it does control the shoulder. Now, I have the one grip he couldn't block. I go hunting for the second hand. I generally like to go underneath so I can take the slack out of my training partner's jacket. What if he gets the undergrip? Okay, then from here, I'll settle for going over the top and locking. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for the throw. So even if my opponent gets the preferred inside position and under position, this is enough to hit a good Yoko Tomonagi from this grip. Okay? I said this earlier in the video, and I'm going to say it to you again. Tomonagi is unusual amongst the major throws insofar as you can lose a gripping battle and still win the throwing battle. This grip is the perfect example of this in operation. Giancarlo gets the vaunted inside position and locks me out. I can't get in. So I take outside position on the tricep. Now from here, I put hands in and I get my second hand on. So most people will tell you Giancarlo has won the grip fight because he has my lapel, he has inside position, and as a result, he should be able to take me out of balance and throw me. Okay? All I do is I work with this so-called inferior position and I lower my expectations. It's true that it's going to be more difficult for me to throw certain throws from this grip. Tomonagi, Uchimata, Haraigoshi, they're going to become more difficult now. You need a high skill level to throw from here. But not Tomonagi. Tomonagi will still work just fine. When he starts to move me around, from here, we settle down into our good jigatai stance so that we can go through, get our man up, and throw him just as well from this grip as you could from sleeve lapel. That's the beauty of this grip. You just lost the grip fight, but you won the throw fight, and that's more important. Okay? So once again, Kenkyotsu situation. I'm righty, he's lefty. He comes out, I fix up my first grip, and I control the shoulder. Now from here, I go through, we get our respective grips on each other. He goes to throw me, and we're constantly walking around away from the man. Now, I skip up to the pyramid position, and then from here, we go around the corner and throw. Done in this way, you can throw people from what most people claim is an inferior grip. It's inferior for some things, I'll grant you that. It's inferior for Taitoshi, Uchimata, Haraigoshi. You can throw from that grip with those moves, but it takes a higher skill level. But not Tomonagi. You can go right into a splendid Tomonagi with this grip. And as you develop in confidence, you're going to suddenly start finding you can throw on both sides with this grip. So if my opponent comes out, he's a strong right-handed player, I will often make use of this. Let's say Giancarlo is right-handed and he's just a flat-out better grip fighter than I am. He's just better than me. He's been doing this longer. Okay? I will let him get his grips and I will switch on here and I will switch my stance. So I was right-handed and I just switched stance to left-handed. Now from here, I put my second hand on and I stand left-handed against Giancarlo. Now I normally throw right-handed. I'm normally a right-handed guy. But with Tomonagi, it's pretty easy for me to throw on both sides. It doesn't take a lot of skill. Strong body. And from here we hit what we always do. That same falling step. And as a result, we throw quite easily on the opposite side. Okay? So regardless of whether it's Kenkyotsu or Aiotsu, I will often, in a Aiotsu situation, same side, I would just switch my stance. I couldn't normally do that. I can't throw left-handed Uchimata or Aigoshi, Taitoshi. I'm terrible on that side. But I can throw Tomoagi easily on both sides. Okay, it's just not that high of a skill. It's not that difficult of a skill. So if we're Kenkyotsu, opposite stance, I will let him take inside position sometimes. And I'll just play outside position. Then from here I get my second hand on. I get my man moving around the corner. I jump to the pyramid position. And then right from here, we're ready to go. Then I come out against a strong right-handed gripper. He out-grips me, gets his power hand on. So I just switch my stance. I get my second hand on. From here, I move out to the pyramid position. That time I hit him with a crossbody throw. We'll look at that later. And we threw him just as easily on the opposite side. I often make use of this outside grip. You can get that on even the best grip fighters. And while it's true many of your power throws in the standing position become difficult to employ from that grip, Tomoagi isn't one of them. You can still throw very successfully with that grip. Okay, let's look at a very important topic that comes out of finishing the throw. Most of our effort has been looking at entering the throw and getting our opponent's head over our head. Now it's time to actually throw him. Let's understand that in the majority of cases, my opponent lands on the same side as my throwing leg. That's very important, so I'm going to say it again. In the vast majority of cases, your opponent lands on the same side as your throwing leg. So let's have a look at this based on the throws we've seen already. Okay, right versus right, standard Yoko Tomoagi, like so. I'm going to throw with my left leg. Okay, if I throw with my left leg, you will see that in the majority of cases, my opponent goes over my left side and we end up on top. Giancarlo, you stand over me. So in slow motion, here, as I bring Giancarlo's head over my head, you'll see I'm throwing with my left foot. So Giancarlo ends up on my left-hand side. I rotated through so it becomes my right, but I threw him left foot and he went over my left shoulder. Okay, so that's the standard method. Conversely, using some of the grips that we looked at earlier, so you can tell, if I work like so and I throw with my right foot, when I throw with my right foot, my training partner goes over my right shoulder to my right side and we come up on top. Okay, so the general rule with Tomoagi is that my opponent lands on the same side as my throwing leg, or he goes over that shoulder, same side as my throwing leg. Okay, that's the general rule. However, there are some cases where you will throw your opponent cross body, where you will use your foot to take him across your body and land on the opposite side. This usually happens as a spontaneous reaction to events that you don't totally control. No matter how good you get at Tomoagi, there's going to be some cases you go underneath that guy, and once he goes up in the air, it's kind of unsure where he's going to land. He's going to be trying to cartwheel out. He's going to be trying to throw his body in the opposite direction. There's going to be a lot of resistance, okay? And sometimes you've got to adapt. You can't be picture perfect every time. And sometimes the right thing to do is in the middle of the throw, take him cross body, okay? It only happens in a minority of cases, but that might be that one case when you need it to work, and it's the gold medal final. So let's look at an example. From a situation where I'm in here and I go with my training partner, I'll demonstrate it out of a double sleeve grip. From here, I get my opponent moving. I go with my left foot, so I should theoretically throw him over my left shoulder. But as I go into the throw, I feel his resistance is going in weird directions, so I throw him across my body, and we land seemingly awkwardly like so. Okay, I should have thrown him over my left, but instead, as I felt resistance to that direction, I changed direction and threw him across my body. When you use the cross-body methods, it won't look as pretty. But remember, Jiu-Jitsu doesn't reward you for being pretty. It rewards you for effectiveness, okay? You're not trying to create maximum amplitude throws in Jiu-Jitsu. Every successful takedown scores the same, 2 points, regardless of how pretty, how much amplitude there is, how technically perfect it looks. They all score the same, 2 points. So in Jiu-Jitsu, don't worry about it so much. Crossbody is a viable way of finishing. You'll use it in a minority of cases, but as I said, it might be an important case, so you got to know it. So once again, we come out with our training partner, we get our grips on. From here, go over the top. Now, as I go into the throw, theoretically, I should be throwing him over my left shoulder, but we're getting a lot of resistance. So I tilt him and take him across my body, okay? Now, guys, I'm gonna give you a word of advice. When you use cross-body finishes, I strongly urge you to add a foot sweep into the throw. If you don't add the foot sweep, something bad can happen, especially if you have a very skilled opponent who knows what he's doing and knows that you like tomoe-nage, okay? This is what can go wrong. If I throw my opponent cross-body and I come in here, Giancarlo, even as he's getting thrown, can go into a kind of a cross-body position on me, and he pins around and jumps into a cross-body position, and you're stuck underneath him, okay? Because he's able to keep his balance through the throw, okay? You can stop that by foot sweeping him in the middle of the throw and chopping his legs out from underneath him so he lands flat on his back. And then there's no way he's going to land on top of you in a dominating pin. Looks like this. So we go up, he gets his grip, I get mine. From here, I put a hand on him, he gets a hand on me, and now we're ready to play. I go into a cross-body finish. As I take Giancarlo up into the air, I physically foot sweep his leg. So I take him up with this leg and I cut with the other. And that scissoring of my legs turns his back to the floor and knocks him down. You don't have to do this every time, but I'm going to strongly recommend that you do. Just in case you have an elite level opponent who can cartwheel, keep his sense of direction, even as he's being thrown, you don't want him laying on top of you. So I'm going to recommend, in the majority of cases, if you elect to throw cross-body, foot sweep him halfway through the throw. Again, first grip on. He gets his grips. Now, as I go through, I take him across my body. As he goes up into the air, I foot sweep so that this leg carries him and this leg here foot sweeps him. And that scissoring puts him directly on his back and gives you a winning throw. It'll score you a nice 2 points and give you top position. Now, my job in this video is to get you throwing people with tomoe-nage in the shortest time possible. As hard as you try and as much devotion as you put into your training as you do, there's going to be many times when you attempt a tomoe-nage that you fail, okay? I can already tell you ahead of time what will be the primary cause of your failure. The primary cause of your failure with tomoe-nage will be that you don't successfully bring your opponent's head over your head. If you can't do that, there's a very high likelihood your opponent will stay on his base and your throw will fail. As much as we try with our moves, if you have a strong resistant opponent who knows what the move is and is doing everything they can to resist it, it's going to happen, okay? You're not going to throw people successfully every time you attempt to throw. That's not realistic. Any more than a boxer believes that every time he throws a punch, he's going to knock out his opponent. It doesn't work that way. In combat sports, there's a huge amount of resistance and there's a huge amount of failure. Your success as an athlete largely comes from your ability to take a perceived failure and make success out of failure. And you can do that very well with tomoe-nage. Okay. As we said, with tomoe-nage, you already know what the main cause of failure is going to be. It's going to be that you can't put your opponent's head over your head. That means there's resistance going back and away from your throw. We're going to cue into that resistance and use it against our opponent. So from a right versus right situation, for example, we get a good grip on our training partner. I come around the corner and I attempt tomoe-nage and I feel a strong resistance to my throw. Okay, as the weight goes onto the heels, even the work of my support leg means I experience failure. Whenever we see this, we're just going to take our hand and go from the sleeve down to our training partner's ankle, and we're going to thread our foot inside just like so. Now we just hit a tripod sweep. As my opponent's weight is going back and away from me, it's very easy for us to knock our training partner down and turn a failed tomoe-nage into a successful sweep. Now here's some interesting news for you. What did that just score in a jiu-jitsu match? It scored 2 points for a sweep. What does a takedown score? 2 points for a takedown. There's no distinction in jiu-jitsu between the score of a takedown and the score of a sweep. So from the tomoe-nage specialist point of view, that sweep off a failed tomoe-nage is just as good as the takedown itself. So you took a failed tomoe and turned it into a successful sweep. That's how I want you operating. My whole goal with tomoe is to take Giancarlo's head and bring it over my head, to bring his weight onto his toes into a situation where I can throw him. His whole thing is to move the head back and away from me. And so there's a battle for his head. I want his head over my head. He wants the exact opposite. If I ever feel I lose the battle and he's backing away from me, I just catch, foot goes inside, and now we just lift and split the legs. And now I get exactly the same score as I would have as if I had been successful with my throw. Now, isn't that a wonderful thing? Even in the case of failure with tomoe, you still get exactly the same reward. If you can condition your mind to think in terms of your opponent's head, I try initially so hard to bring his head over my head, and when I feel failure, I just go with it, trip, and put him down with a tripod sweep. This forwards and backwards action-reaction is it's just money in the bank. You could just use this for a long period of time. You get a reputation as a good tomoe thrower, okay? Giancarlo's been watching me in the gym. Okay, this guy likes tomoe. As we come out and we make our respective grips, we move around with our training partner. From here, he goes into strong resistance, and I feel it's hard for me to move him. Now we just come in, we apply the tripod sweep, and we get a nice little action-reaction down to the mat. So that's one good example of turning a failed tomoe into a successful sweep in the opposite direction. You can also do the same thing with a reverse tripod sweep. Again, I'll demonstrate it from right versus right. We can do the same thing from left versus right. My opponent comes out, he makes grips. From here, we go in, I attempt tomoe. Again, I feel there's a very, very strong action-reaction going against me. This time we're just going to bring our foot in and knock him down with reverse tripod sweep. So, we go in, we attempt tomoe. Conventional tripod sweep, here and here. Reverse tripod sweep, here and here. And we get the knockdown and the score, okay? Every so often, you're going to run into someone who's just an absolute Hercules. This might occur in an open weight division. I'll demonstrate this out of double sleeves. Okay, imagine Giancarlo was 260 pounds and I'm 170, and this is open weight division. He comes out, makes a grip, I go over the top, he gets a grip, and I've got double triceps just like so. From here I attempt tomoe and he goes to pull me off the floor. So I'm in here and he's just pulling me off the mat. Okay, under these circumstances, it's a pretty easy thing for us as he pulls back and away, is to put our 2 feet in and knock him backwards. I often use this against people who set their weight all the way back and hunker back and away from me. So we go in, we get our first grip. I go over the top, and from here, I try tomoe, and he's just like, oh man. And then from here, we split the legs and put him down in this fashion. Again, it's that same action-reaction. This time we're using double kochi to knock the man back and away. Simple tricks like this, all based around one consideration, our opponent's head. My goal was to bring his head directly over mine. If I can do that, I can throw anyone. If I can't do it, then we go action-reaction with a sweep in the opposite direction. So, in this throw, I want you to pay particular attention to Giancarlo's head. We come out, first grip on. He gets a second grip. This time, I successfully bring Giancarlo's head over mine. So we hit that beautiful falling step that brings his head over ours. Now it's so easy for us to use his hand position to throw. This time, he resists strongly. And I feel he's pulling back and away. When we feel that resistance, we knock him down with double kochi, and we score 2 points in a backwards direction. So these are classic examples of using action-reaction. Tripod sweeps, reverse tripod sweeps, and double kochi. As we feel the battle for our opponent's head is being lost, sweep backwards. If you win the battle, throw forwards with tomoe. Now, we're talking about the idea of creating success out of failure. That's a distinguishing characteristic of champion athletes. In a combat sport where everyone knows what the main moves are and everyone knows what the counters to the main moves are, the majority of your attempts at a given move are always going to fail. That's just reality, okay? We all have an ideal that every time you hit a move, it works perfectly. Well, that's the ideal, then there's reality. And the reality is your opponent's a every bit as tough as you are. They know most of the moves that you know, and they know most of the counters. So you can fully expect the majority of your attempts to fail. It's up to you to draw success out of failure. And the way we do this is by monitoring our opponent's head position. Okay? One of my favorite ways to get students developing a strong tomoe-nage is to fail, try again, and succeed. A two-stage tomoe-nage. This doesn't look pretty. Okay, in a nice tomoe-nage, you throw the guy effortlessly. It's beautiful to watch. Okay, but reality is sometimes it's not always going to look pretty. Okay, remember in jiu-jitsu, it's not the pretty ones that score. It's any move that knocks your opponent down scores the same 2 points, whether it's picture perfect or whether it's ugly and scrappy looking. This one is ugly and scrappy looking. Okay, a common reaction to tomoe-nage is for my opponent to sit down on his ankles. Okay, so if we go, I'll demonstrate from sleeve lapel. We're in here like so, and I attempt the tomoe-nage, and from here he just sits down like this. Probably do 1 foot, and then from here you're like, oh man, I can't bring him over because I can't bring his head over my head. Okay, so put me in a tomoe-nage position. You go down to tomoe-nage, you'll see people just sit down like so. Okay, and then tomoe-nage becomes quite difficult because your opponent has lowered his center of gravity, and if you can't get underneath the center of gravity, it's awfully hard to throw someone. Okay, so when we see this kind of thing going on, we'll often hit a two-stage tomoe-nage. I'll come in on a given tomoe-nage and we try for the throw, and he sits down on me. When I see this kind of thing going on, we're going to put our elbows in close to our body, and we're going to draw our training partner's head forward, almost like a sweep from open guard. So my first attempt from standing failed, and then from here I bring him forward. My knees come to my chest, and my elbows come to my shoulders, and his head comes over my head. Now from here we start lifting and bringing his feet up off the floor. We put our second foot on and dump him. Okay, so it's kind of a ugly looking tomoe-nage, to be honest with you. It looks like a failed tomoe-nage, and then you give it a strong second shot. The key to the strong second shot is your knees coming to your chest and your elbows coming to your shoulders and taking them up and over. So from a situation where we come on and we're working like so, I come in, I attempt a given tomoe-nage, and I feel like, oh man, he just sat down on me. Okay, from this position, look, I draw everything forward. If I pull with my elbows and push with my legs, I don't bring him forward. My whole goal is to bring his head over my head. So we draw him up, forward, and end up with a nice two-stage tomoe-nage. Okay, again, another way for us to draw success out of an initial failure.